evening and welcome to the regular City Council meeting for the City of St. Peter, Minnesota. It is Monday, July 8th, 2024. At 7 p.m. we are called to order. Would all please rise for the pledge? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You've all received a copy of the agenda. Are there any revisions or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda as distributed?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approval say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. The minutes are printed on pages 4 through 7 of the packet. Are there any revisions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes as distributed?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approval say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. We have time on our agenda for visitors. Are there any visitors who'd like to make comment on any agenda item? Hearing none, we also have time for general visitor comments. Any visitors may address the council on any matter whatsoever. Seeing none, we will move on to the approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda begins with a memo on page 8 and concludes with a resolution on page 28 through 29 of the packet. The consent agenda includes the following employee appointments: Josie Webush as a seasonal laborer in stormwater at $14.25 per hour. Caitlin Hoffs, part-time custodian at $15.75 per hour. The following advisory board appointments will be approved: Miriam Andre, the Tourism and Visitors Bureau, with a term ending December 31st, 2024. That is a correction to the printed packet, which says December 26. Corey Johnson to the Economic Development Authority with a term ending December 31st, 2028. The following individuals printed in the packet will be appointed as election judges for the City of St. Peter for August and November 2024 elections, as well as the scheduled of disbursements for June 18th, 2024 through June 28th, 2024. Is there any discussion on any consent agenda item, Brad?
I would just like to make a note that with the approval of Ms. Johnson to the EDA, I think the EDA will have a female majority, at least for the first time in my memory, so I think it's something of note.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion on the consent agenda? All right, hearing nothing further, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as corrected?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Rao.
Aye.
Councilmember Weisenfeld.
Aye.
Councilmember Sharstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson. Aye.
All right, the resolution is approved. We have no items of unfinished business tonight. We will move on to new business. Our first item of new business is the authorization of a server bid.
Mayor, members, you'll see information included in your packet starting on page 30. This information outlines the rationale for this, which, as you may recall, was originally budgeted and planned from an equipment certificate in 2023. We didn't execute at that time because there was concern about receiving some of the pieces and parts, and as you know, with the changing world that we lived in at that time, there was concern about the ability to see that and see it at a reasonable price. What you see in here is a process that followed your purchase policy and includes servers, software, installation, and configuration from Presidio for $148,700. And again, this would be funded from the 2023 equipment certificate. These are the main servers that provide for your finances, your utility billing, a lot of things that run on your system. Again, the rationale for why we are purchasing new includes that your current servers are more than a decade old and they are no longer going to be serviced, nor can they be upgraded from a software perspective where we can purchase support for that software. And so a failure could be catastrophic for some of your finance and utility billing and other systems. So we want to make sure that's the case. We did do an evaluation related to whether we should go with all of this to the cloud. And at this time, we believe this is the least expensive approach. But I would expect that in the next 7 to 10, maybe we'll get out again to 12 years that we will be needing to upgrade. And at that time, likely cloud-based solution will be less expensive over the long term. You might note, if you're kind of a techie, a little bit of an interesting twist here. You will still note that we do backups of your servers on tape, which is kind of old school. But it works very well for us. It's very cost effective, and it allows us to take those tapes and move them to a different location readily as compared to other modes of saving. And so that's been what we've worked with for a number of years. Our consultant says, well, it's kind of old school, but it works well for you. Why change? It's cost effective. And so I wanted to point out that kind of nuance if you're a tech person and read through that entire list. The resolution's included in your packet. As you know, with this amount of money, and certainly with the equipment certificate, your policy and your rules provide for a separate agenda item, which this is included in your packet, with the approval or the resolution providing approval on page 40. I'm happy to answer questions as best I can, but please don't answer a question or ask a question related to why an SID 125 is better than a 120, because I don't know the answer to that. But I can tell you our consultants and certainly our tech folks internally have reviewed this, and this is the proposed solution.
All right, questions for Todd? Carrie?
It looks like on page 39, Todd, we were looking at sale price versus monthly lease price. Or is there some sort of lease component within?
There could be a lease component, but we believe that purchasing at this point is the way to go, because they're going to get their money and how the numbers work out. So we feel comfortable with $148,700. I should also mention that this is a few $1,000s cheaper than we originally anticipated as part of that equipment certificate.
Yeah, I think I saw that it was 4,000
Yeah.
less. And we just were advised to kind of go this route. Were there any other quotes? Was there any reason to look at other quotes?
So we did have one other that came in, but it came in after the deadline. So this is the
Okay.
only one that met the criteria for the deadline.
Got it. Thank you.
Did you get a rough estimate of how much the cloud computing option was now and how much cheaper this is?
We did, and so over the term of the expected life expectancy, about $10,000 less this is. So that's where we were,
So the other one was 158-ish?
about 160. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. $12,000 to do the system that we're gonna upgrade to anyway seems like a better use of money in long term in my mind, but maybe I'm not reading that quite right.
I think no matter what you do in the future, you're going to expend a certain amount of dollars. So whether you're in the cloud right now, based on what we expect the life expectancy here, you're going to pay a little bit more for that cloud. But no matter where you go, you're going to continue to pay for that cloud. So a cloud wouldn't be a one-time purchase. That would be over the term. So if you changed in 7 years, 10 years, 20 years, you're going to pay for that cloud service at that point too. Now, it is possible that the cloud service becomes less expensive in 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. I don't know that I can predict that for you. But certainly the memory cost per gig continues to go down.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, I guess my concern is if we spend $148,000 on this right now, and then in 6 years or something we need to move to the cloud, and then we need to spend the 160 minus whatever it goes down by, when we could have just spent the 160 now and paid a nominal cost for cloud space, which is super cheap typically. I'm just, I don't know. I'm not gonna hold this up, but I think I probably would have been. If the difference was like 800,000 for the cloud versus 140, that was what I was expecting you to say, and I was like, oh, of course. But for 10,000, I lean more towards that we should probably go with the tech that's going towards anyway.
And Todd, correct me if I'm wrong. If I got what you were saying, over the same
Life expectancy.
anticipated life expectancy, the cost of the cloud over the 10 to 12 year life expectancy, the cost of the cloud subscription would be about $158,000, $160,000. So it'd be about $16,000 a year.
Is that what you were saying?
Yes. So over the same amount of life expectancy that we got out of our current server. So after the end of 10 to 12 years, when we think that this server will end, we'll have to move to something anyways.
So
So
you'll
this'll
either
be
be
some-
rebuying, or you'll be going, well, in
Or
any
we'll be
event, you're
moving
gonna
to
be buying
something.
something, some way to store and software associated with that. The software for this is particularly the operating systems for the servers, so that's the software component here. It's not it happens to be a Microsoft product, but it's not Microsoft 365, it's server-specific software.
Additional questions for Todd? Hearing nothing further, is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ramp.
Aye.
Councilmember Weisenfeld.
Aye.
Councilmember Sharstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. We will move on to reports. First up, report of the mayor. I only would like to thank everybody who participated in the 4th of July celebration, including the fireworks display here in St. Peter and the parade, of course, and everything wonderful that happened down at the park. So thanks to everybody. It was a great, great holiday once again in St. Peter. So reports of council members. We do have time for council member DeVos wanted to make a report, so we'll go to you first, Brad.
Okay, so on Friday, I was invited to a meeting that was hosted by the Great Plains Institute. It was facilitated by 2 members of the Treasury Department. Apparently, they talked at the LMC meeting the day before. It was on direct pay or elective pay, and which is essentially a 30% credit given for renewable energy projects. This is a credit that used to only be available to private individuals or for-profit businesses. With the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, it's now available to nonprofits and cities. They wanted to hear, this was a smaller group, they wanted to hear from people or organizations that were actually utilizing this, which St. Peter is one of them. With our solar array we're putting up at the wastewater treatment plant, it shifted our process from using an investor prior to the IRA to actually installing it through SIMPA, but essentially SIMPA and ourselves were the actual owners of it, receiving the direct benefit of it. As well as we'll be using it on the next 50 kilowatt project we've got in the works. It was the Clean Energy Resource Team and Minnesota Climate Cities Coalition. They're affiliated with Great Plains Institute. They were really impressed with what we've got going on here. It's something that we can be used as an example to other communities that are working through this process, and it's also really encouraging when you go to these events and you see other cities that are working through the process as well, realizing you're not alone, but there's also room for us to grow. So.
Thank you. Any other council members who'd like to make reports at this time? All right, we will, Dustin.
Todd, are we waiting to talk about the League of Minnesota Cities when?
I had it under my report, but I was going to turn it over to all of you, so if you wanted to do it at the mayor's pleasure right now, that's cool too, whatever works for you guys.
Or we can jump into, we'll have your own report.
My anticipation was that I would be silent and let the
Okay.
folks that attended talk about what they had going on.
In that case, we'll give time for council members who want to speak about the League of Minnesota Cities Conference.
Yeah, nodding at me. So we had a couple of us, Councilmember Johnson, Councilmember Ramp, and myself were in attendance. We got the privilege of hearing Todd host one of the breakout sessions, and quite frankly, he tore it up. Multiple elected leaders sought me out after his session, and we're planning on reaching out to him, and we were kind of the talk of the conference after that one.
So tore it up is a good thing.
Yes, he tore it up. Right?
Thank you for the clarification.
Yes, Todd did very, very well. Another session that I attended was actually a community building session that was led by multiple police chiefs. One being the first female Latina police chief from LeSueur, who is just recently in the newspaper, and she comes from St. Peter, and a lot of good ideas and things that we can talk with our police chief about, of things we can do better and improvements on what we're already doing.
Thanks, Dustin.
Go ahead.
I only have to add that it was my first time attending this conference, and it's a really well done conference. The breakout sessions were really interesting. My fellow council members and I who attended, we were strategic in how we, who attended what, just so that we'd really get around to all the information that was provided. Also, I think just the opportunity for connection with other council members, other elected officials, the LMC staff, and then the city staff from all around the state is just so great. And we get a lot of accolades. We learn things from other people. And it's really, you leave feeling very energized and very excited to get to work in your city after attending something like that. So I feel really grateful. I think we all feel really grateful that we get to have these opportunities. And so I thought it was a great conference, and especially it was my first time. I was really impressed.
Oh, good. Ben?
Yeah, the conference is definitely very beneficial. Tons of breakout sessions from artificial intelligence and how we can use it in our city to pass information on to our constituents by calling information that, answers that we give. So that way, if somebody asks the same question that somebody was already given the answer to, that answer can be given to somebody quickly. Just tons and tons of information. I sat in the session about the solar and renewable energy, and just fascinating the way that they're just trying to gear things towards everybody and anybody being able to take advantage of renewable energy, not just private sector, but public sector, everybody, anybody, just a phenomenal. The networking, it's super beneficial conference.
Another piece that was not mentioned by Councilmember Johnson or Ramp that I do think is worth noting is the League of Minnesota Cities lobbies and advocates for all cities. And they do have a legislative update at every one of their annual conferences where they go through the good, the bad, and quite frankly, the ugly of the previous legislative session. Probably the biggest disappointment that was shared was that the bonding bill did not pass. And not only did that impact cities statewide, St. Peter had a project that was in the bonding bill that did not get a vote in the final minutes. So that was something that was on their radar to discuss, of a major disappointment of things they fought for that, quite honestly, we didn't accomplish.
Well, thanks everybody for attending. Really appreciate that you spend your time doing that, and that you can bring all your good information and learning back to St. Peter. So thanks very much. If there's nothing further from council members, we will move on to a report from the city administrator.
If I could, Madam Mayor, I'll start out with flood wrap up, even though I know for many folks it is not fully wrapped up yet, but I'll mention about 6 or 8 bullet points, give or take a little bit. I do want to mention wastewater treatment to begin with. I think that's an important factor for you. As you know, we did not have any systems failures, whether it was water or wastewater, related to backup in folks' basements. Anybody that received water would have received water that was really from the river or through ground penetration of their basement seepage. We did not have any failures, and at one point our wastewater treatment plant was treating more than 5 million gallons a day. What that points to is that certainly it's important to understand how wastewater treatment plants work, and we can't do that 365 days a year, but we can do that. And certainly what was causing that major inflow as compared to a normal day, which is a little bit over 1 million, 1.3, as I think Pete told you when you were on your tour last time, was that it's diluted, of course, with river water and other things. But I think it's important to note that that does have a real cost to your system and to your ratepayers. And so the continuation of tightening up our system, making it more leak-proof, certainly in that area that is north of Union along Highway or within Highway 169, continues to be important. And we could talk about the engineering aspect of that if you want at a future date, but we have a series of projects that we've worked on and will continue to work on. And this just tells us the tale that there's more to do in that area to reduce inflow and infiltration. But the plant worked effectively. We met all our permit limits related to effluent that goes into the Minnesota River, and so we should feel really good about that. You have really, even though I'm talking about 1.3 versus over 5, you have a very tight system compared to most other communities, and so we should feel good about that, but there's always room to do more work. In relation to the direct flood response, as many of you know, Front Street was closed at the intersection of Walnut for a number of days, really responding. And that water that's there is really coming from two primary sources, one of which is it's groundwater from the river that's pushing this way, but that's also a low spot within your stormwater system. And so as we receive rain over this time and it goes into catch basins in areas of our community, it wants to go to that point as well. So what you saw in the intersection there for water comes from a couple of different locations. And so as you know, we were pumping there for quite some time and did a lot of work in that area. I think there's some opportunity for us to think about possible changes within our stormwater system within that area to help reduce the amount or the level of pumping that's necessary. And so I know the team's talking about that and thinking about that. Some of you may have heard differently, but certainly in that area of town, my understanding is from direct contact with folks is that we had less than a dozen homes that were impacted by that seepage in their basements in that location. So we will continue to provide some communication to those folks. We have received some requests related to what do I do with the stuff that's wet from my basement? Is there a place for me to take that? And because, or one of the reasons that we don't have a place to take that, that the city will take care of, is that Nicolet County wasn't into disaster declaration. And so we want to encourage folks, maybe they have some drywall or they have some carpet or they have, like we have, City Hall had a little bit of water in a couple spots in the basement there where it's sopped up in boxes, right? So maybe that's what happened in your basement. You can certainly contact any of the current licensed waste haulers within the community, and they can help you dispose of that properly. It'll cost something, there's no doubt about that. But that's certainly something that you could do, and our recommendation would be is you let it dry out as much as you can, because certainly dry carpet is a lot lighter than wet carpet, and you generally get charged not just on volume, but weight when it goes to the tipping station in Mankato. And so if people have questions, please feel free to give my office a call, and we'll give them as much information as we can and put them in contact, or at least give them the right data to contact folks that can help them out. I also want to mention the Highway 22 bridge, which is on the south end of the community that opened earlier, closed later, opened earlier than the Highway 99 bridge. We will certainly have some severe damage in that area. I think it's really yet to be determined until the water goes down, but there's a trail there, and as you know, there's disc golf. And if you've watched that area, the secondary bridge or the pressure relief, the smaller bridge there was quite a current that was running through there. And so if you walk down there now, you can walk down there or drive by, not too slowly, don't hold up traffic, but you can see where the river has cut a new path in that area right through that disc golf. And so we don't know the damage on that. We'll continue to assess that. Water's got to go down a lot more before we'll be able to assess that well. In previous years, you know, that trail has been damaged by the pressure, the flow of the water in previous floods. So we're really anticipating that again this time. The bridge is sound and safe. DOT's done all of that work, but it's those kind of park amenities underneath that we'll have to do some work on. I'm not sure about the parking area. That looks mostly dry, but it has a little bit more dune in it than maybe it had before. And so there'll be some cleanup. And speaking of dunes, I do want to mention the Mill Pond Park. We expect some damage, not sure about the full level of damage there and the cost of that on the ring road, but certainly folks should anticipate that the boat launch there might not be available for more than a few weeks. That partially has to do with the height of the river, but certainly there is more river sand that's been deposited in that parking area, you know, people launch their boats, than I've seen in 27 years. So there's some serious work that is going to have to go on. We don't know whether the boat launch is still in place. As some of you, if you've used it before, know it's a cement railed boat launch, and so it's possible that some of that's been damaged too. There's a lot of flow in that area, and so we'll see and we'll know better. But for folks that are interested in utilizing that, please communicate with us. We'll continue to put out information as those types of things open. And since I'm in that neighborhood, I'll talk about the campground. Campground is not available, and so anyone that had a reservation for that, we've alerted them that we won't be able to host them at the campground. We're hoping that it will be available for tram. I don't want to make a guarantee, but we're hoping it'll be available for tram. As you know, that area was underwater. We have restrooms and showers that have to be taken care of, electric that needs to be taken care of and tested, and so there's some work that needs to go into that, but we'll try and work on that quickly and efficiently, and we're really trying to target that event because we did have some reservations for that event.
Todd,
Yes.
Can you clarify for people who don't know what's TRAM? It's Trail Ride Across Minnesota.
Yeah, the ride across Minnesota. They don't call it RAM, but it's for, I'm trying to think of the organization that supports it. Maybe one of you remember. I don't remember. MS, yes it is. Thank you. Yeah, MS, multiple sclerosis. And so that event is in Minnesota Square Park, but we usually host a lot of campers for that. And we had campers, for the 4th of July and other events that we've communicated with. And again, we couldn't host them because of the water that was in the mill pond. Those are, I think, the 8 bullet points that I had. I'm happy to visit if folks have other questions. We did or will include, as you may or may not know, the hot sheet is going to be starting up in the next week or so, or 2 here. And so we do have some information, and we really hope that folks that had serious damage communicate on the Nicollet County website and put in their amount of damage, because that does go towards FEMA eligibility. I don't know that we're going to make the threshold of over $10 million in damage to meet that threshold. Maybe, but it's tough for me to see that right now.
And that's Nicollet County as a whole, correct?
That's Nicollet County as a whole. And so we'll see. But I, from my perspective, with consideration to previous floods, and certainly consideration to the folks that had water in their basements, which I get. I've been there in the past myself, so I get what a problem that can be. We probably fared pretty well as compared to other communities in our area. And I think some of that has to do with council's planning in the past, acquiring properties that were flood prone. I will mention, and I don't know that this will go anyplace, but I have been talking with some of our neighboring communities and with Region 9 about sponsoring an application for funds to potentially, again, continue to purchase property where we could mitigate damage in the future. I don't know whether we'll have any luck. I don't know if we'll be excluded because there's not a declaration in Nicollet County. All of this is kind of new, but it's a good thing, I think, for us to think about and consider if we have the opportunity. So again, I'd stand, if there are any not too technical questions, I'm happy to answer as best as I can.
Any questions for Todd?
I will mention the number one question that I do get from community members is this the highest the water has ever been? We don't get to decide that, but it's certainly top 3, I would think. Certainly top 3. And our friends at DOT and others have been super cooperative and helpful. And anyway, good partnerships helps in recovery. Yeah. That's all I have, Madam Mayor, on that one.
Okay.
The next one that I have is tangentially related, but certainly thank Curtis and the team from Public Works. Curtis is the water, wastewater, stormwater superintendent, and put a lot of work into the response here in pumping. The crews were working all times of day and night during the pumping scenario, doing a lot of work related to ensuring that wastewater and other facilities operate appropriately, electric, all those things, in communication with the neighborhood down there. And so we want to do a shout out to them. Certainly a lot of work. PD did a lot of work on informing folks and helping steer them in the right direction. So I want to thank those folks as well. Again, from my perspective, we fared much better than many other communities within our neighborhood. So, and then LMC conference, you guys stole my thunder. I do want to mention though, just quick, that the presentation that I participated in is really about you and the processes that you use to keep the grass green. And by that I mean not allowing things when you have a little fire, letting a spark go someplace else and letting it get out of control. You do a lot of things in working together as a team and in communication and the processes that you use to keep the grass green. And there again, we seem to fare better than many other communities. And that's why a lot of people, and it's fun, it's great to hear that people were coming up and asking you. I appreciate that. I didn't know 2 of the council members were going to be there, so I had to be very cautious on my commentary.
But we didn't tell you on purpose.
But it's great that you guys can be recognized for those processes that you go through to help serve your community above politics. So anyway, that's how I think about it, and that's some of the message that I think we were able to get across as a part of that session. So, but great partners in that. Certainly Kathy Lundeen from Gustavus was one of the presenters, and then Amy Gorley from League of Minnesota Cities. So you are known for the processes that you go through. It's cool. It's cool. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further reports, we have a resolution calling for a closed session.
Madam Mayor, this is a request by the city administrator to discuss the potential to purchase or sell real property located at 107 West Nassau. I do not anticipate coming back into open session to take any action other than to adjourn. And the resolution is on the last page of your packet.
And will we have our closed session in here? Will we go downstairs?
We're gonna go someplace else, so the team can clean up here since you're only gonna come back into open session to adjourn.
All right. Any additional questions? How about a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Weisenfeld.
Aye.
Councilmember Sharstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. It is 7:30 p.m. and we will move into executive session.